Hi, this is Joseph with Conscious Collective, and in this video, I want to talk about the four foundations of mindfulness. And this is an ancient teaching that was taught by the Buddha in the Satipatthana Sutra. It's one of the first Buddhist sutras, and it's one of the Buddha's first teachings. And it's a teaching that he recommended everyone practice, not just monks and nuns, but anyone that wants to be free of suffering, that wants more happiness, joy, and peace in their lives. The Buddha recommended them to practice this teaching of the four foundations of mindfulness. So in this video, I'm going to give sort of an overview of the four foundations of mindfulness, and in future videos, I'll go into each foundation in more depth. But if you'd like to learn more about this practice, the four foundations of mindfulness, and to get established in these four foundations, then check out the Conscious Living course that I recently just released. You can find more information about it in the description below this video, but I modeled that course after this teaching of the four foundations of mindfulness, so it sort of guides you through each one of these with teachings and guided meditations to help you in your mindfulness practice to use these four foundations as a tool for getting established in mindfulness as a way of being. So if you're interested, check the link in the description below. So these four foundations of mindfulness are sort of like the pillars that make up this building of mindfulness. Each one of them is important. Each one of them is one of the ways that we help to ourselves get established in a mindfulness practice. And again, mindfulness is really about bringing our awareness into the present moment and experiencing this moment as it is. So experiencing reality without judgment. Instead of narrating our experience, creating a story about it, creating thoughts about it and opinions about it, we train ourselves to just pay attention to what is actually here in our immediate experience and to be in touch with our immediate experience. So many of us are so distracted by our minds, so caught up in the demands of daily life, the stresses that we experience, that we overlook the beauty and the joy of being alive right here and now. And mindfulness is all about being aware of our lives, being available to our lives and appreciating our lives, just being in touch with each moment as we experience it. It's an incredibly liberating and healing practice. And so these four foundations are the way that we get started and the way that we follow this practice of mindfulness as an actual way of life. And so these four foundations are the foundation of the body, the foundation of feelings, the foundation of mind, and the foundation of phenomena. And so again, each one of these foundations is a way that we can get established in mindfulness. So with the body as the first foundation, our body is always experiencing things in the present moment. The senses that we experience that are always happening now, our breath is always happening now, and we can focus our awareness on these aspects of our body to help us stay mindful, to help us stay present in the moment. So whenever we find ourselves distracted or lost in thought, we can recognize it and then bring our attention back to our body as a way to stay here in the moment instead of continuing to be lost in the mind. So one of the ways we can do this is with our breath. So simply by taking a deep breath in and a deep breath out, we can sort of stop ourselves in our tracks, stop our mind in its tracks, and bring our attention back to our breathing. And we can practice just deep breathing like that, or even just being aware of our breath without manipulating it to be deeper or different in any way. We can just observe the way that we're breathing in the moment. We can also use our sensory experience, the senses that we're constantly experiencing in each moment, what we're touching, what we're tasting, smelling, hearing, seeing. Just by focusing on our immediate sensory experience, we can bring our attention back to the present moment instead of being distracted or lost in thought. So the second foundation is the foundation of feelings, and this has a little bit different meaning than feelings does for us in the West. The way that the Buddha taught about feelings is that we have our primary feelings and our secondary feelings. So our primary feelings are that everything has a quality of pleasantness, unpleasantness, or neutrality. So everything that we experience either has a quality of it that's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And from these primary feelings, all of our secondary feelings follow, which include all of the emotions that we experience. So the primary feeling of pleasantness, from that we experience these pleasant emotions of happiness, of joy, of peace, of freedom, and so on. And from the unpleasant emotions or the unpleasant primary feeling, then we have all of these secondary emotions of irritation, anger, sadness, grief, and so on. And from the neutral primary feeling, when we experience things in a neutral way, we have this tendency to not really pay much attention to what we're experiencing. And so this leaves room for the secondary feelings of ignorance, of confusion, of delusion, of distraction, and things of that nature. And so how we use feelings as a way to establish ourselves in mindfulness is just to be aware of how we're feeling in each moment. The Buddha often spoke of our feelings, excuse me, our feelings as a river. So we have this river that's constantly flowing, constantly changing. We experience happiness in one moment and then it passes. We experience sadness in one moment and then it passes. And our feeling life is like this. It's this constantly shifting tide of emotions. And so all that we're invited to do in this practice is just to be aware of what we're feeling when we're feeling it, and to allow that emotion to be, to allow ourselves to be with that emotion and to feel that emotion while it's there, and to allow it to pass when it's ready to pass. So there's no good or bad emotion. There's no need for us to label an emotion as either good or bad, as something we want or don't want. We're invited to just be aware of it. So there's nothing we have to do to try to change it, fix it, resolve it. Just being aware of it and allowing ourselves to feel it and acknowledge it when it's there. So if a feeling of happiness arises, we can acknowledge it and say, happiness, or happiness has arisen in me. If a feeling of sadness arises, we can say sadness, or a feeling of sadness has arisen in me. And all we do is just acknowledge it and allow it to be. And there's so much more depth to this foundation, but I'll go into that in a future video so I can keep this video in a reasonable length. So the third foundation of mindfulness is the mind, and this includes our thoughts. So we're always creating thoughts and stories and narratives and opinions about our experience, and the Buddha invites us just to be aware of this. How are you thinking about your experience? How are you narrating your experience? What kind of stories are you creating about the experience that you're having? And what kind of emotions are evoked from the way that you think? So if you think of something as bad or undesirable, then it creates this feeling of unpleasantness within us. If we think of something as wonderful or beautiful or positive, it evokes these very pleasant feelings within us. And so rather than intentionally creating positive or negative thoughts, though that's something we can do too, is train ourselves to think more positively, really what we're invited to do here is just to be aware of our thoughts and just to notice the way that we're thinking. And again, this is a real quality of mindfulness, is to do so without judgment. So whatever thoughts you notice, don't judge them as bad or good or anything at all. Try not to identify with it as that's my thought, or I'm thinking this way, or I shouldn't be thinking this way, I should think this way, and anything of that nature. It's just to bring awareness to our thoughts, just to observe our thoughts. And there's so much power in awareness, in mindfulness, and just paying attention. Because as soon as we pay attention to our thoughts, we create this separation between us as awareness and the thoughts that our awareness is observing or experiencing. And just by creating that space and creating that gap, we stop identifying with our thoughts. Our thoughts aren't so controlling or dominating or influencing. We can just witness them and just allow this thought to come and allow this thought to go, just like the feelings come and go. So again, I'll go into more depth in this in a future video, but the fourth foundation of mindfulness is phenomena. So phenomena includes everything that we experience in the world. So it's the reality of life. And the Buddha gave several teachings about phenomena and how Buddhists perceive phenomena. So they see things, as interconnected, which everything is interconnected. There's no separate thing, no separate self. Everything depends on and relies on other things. Everything's impermanent. Everything is constantly changing. Everything is coming and going. And so in this foundation of mindfulness, we use some of these Buddhist teachings as a way to view the world, but just to be present to the phenomena that we experience in the world. So to be present to the ever-changing, impermanent nature of things, to be present to the interdependence and interconnectedness of things, and just to be present to life, to be aware of reality as it is, instead of how we think about it or what we believe it is or how we've been taught to view it. So these four foundations of mindfulness encompass the whole of our life. They're extremely practical and powerful tools to help us get established in mindfulness. And it's a practice that's really benefited me in my life, to use these tools, to use the tool of my body, of mindfulness of my body, mindfulness of my emotions, mindfulness of my thinking, mindfulness of phenomena in the world. So I'm excited to share it with you, and look forward to going into more videos, into depth in more videos in the future. But again, if you'd like to learn more about this topic, check out the course that I created, because we go in depth into each one of these with teachings and practices and guided meditations. So I put a lot into this course, into helping you get established in mindfulness as a way of being. And that's my intention for it. And that's my invitation for you. So thank you for watching this video, taking the time to watch this. And if you have any questions, if you have any comments, please feel free to ask or leave those comments. And feel free to like, to comment, to subscribe. That helps out the channel a lot, helps it grow and get better rankings in this YouTube algorithm. But again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. And I hope that this practice of mindfulness and these tools can benefit you to live your life in a more mindful and peaceful way, because truly through mindfulness we find freedom. Awareness is freedom. Being aware of our lives, being aware of our mind, our body, our emotions, instead of being totally caught up in them and overwhelmed by them or suffering because of them. We create this spaciousness in which we can simply observe things in a relaxed way and find stability in our mindfulness, in our awareness. So that's why I'm so passionate about this subject, because I find so much freedom and healing in it. And I really want for you and for others to experience that healing and freedom too. So hope that you have a mindful and peaceful day. And thank you again. Much love.